Kia ora, Mr Speaker. We'd like to acknowledge some of the concerns raised by the Labour Party, and we would have also appreciated some consultation around the Select Committee process. But looking at this bill, we've considered this legislation carefully, and we don't feel confident that its provisions provide sufficient protection for those who are in need of legal aid from undue interference by the government. We do not also agree with many of the findings in Dame Margaret Baisley's report on which this legislation is based. Therefore, we will not be voting to support this bill in first reading, but we do look forward to seeking further information during the Select Committee process. The legal aid system, as described in the regulatory impact statement, is designed to assist those who cannot afford legal representation when they need it. The legal aid system helps to uphold the principles and access to justice, equality before the law and natural justice. This helps to build and maintain public confidence in the legal system. The regulatory impact statement notes that there is a clear relationship between the justice sector outcomes and the provision of publicly funded legal aid services. So the provision of publicly funded legal aid is critical and must be undertaken with the greatest care for natural justice principles. The Baisley Review came out of concerns raised about the legal aid system, including concerns around rising costs, problems with access and the impact on the courts. Her report notes that the Legal Services Agency was established to administer the legal aid system, maintain a list of lawyers who could provide legal aid services and grant legal aid. As a Crown agent, the Legal Services Agency performs these functions at arm's length from the government, and this is important because it avoids any conflicts of interest the government may have when funding legal aid to people who are involved in litigation with the Crown, such as when the Crown is prosecuting a crime or when people are suing the Crown. We believe this is an extremely important principle to uphold. It's not appropriate for the Crown to be decision makers over the funding available to those whom the Crown is the litigant against. The report notes the new tribunal should have an explicit requirement to have regard to both access to justice considerations and responsible expenditure of public monies. To this end, the chair of the new tribunal should not be a lawyer. I find it incredible that the Baisley report should recommend that the chair of any new tribunal should not be a lawyer. This highlights the entire tone of the Baisley Review, that lawyers cannot be trusted with public monies. I wonder if John Key should be maybe watching out for Chris Finlayson. Now, reading through the legislation, it seems that the recommendation to deny anyone from the legal profession the chance to head the tribunal has been dropped, and this is a good thing. However, the Green Party is an evidence-based party, and this legislation will scrap the current legal aid review panel. We haven't seen any evidence that this panel has been doing a good job. There's been some snide comments in the review. There's been some snide comments in the Baisley report, and poof, they're gone. Now, I understand that the staff of the Legal Services Agency will be carrying on, but this won't be the same for the review panel. Once this legislation is enacted, they're gone. And that topic needs to be addressed by the Minister. What did the Legal Aid Review Panel do wrong, and why are they going? It's also worth noting that Ms Baisley's report was concerned that the Legal Aid Review Panel's funding was through the Legal Services Agency. Now both organisations will fall under the purview of the Ministry of Justice, and I'm not sure how that assists. We already have a breach of this principle when it comes to the treaty settlement process. That process is clearly flawed, and in large part because the accused party determines the funding for the aggrieved party. So it's with dismay that we see the recommendation from the Baisley report is that because the legal aid system is essential to the operation of the justice system, administration of legal aid system and procurement of legal aid services, I recommend that it be centralised and close to the Crown. Throughout the Baisley report, which was the catalyst for this legislation in front of us today, there's an implied suggestion that lawyers cannot be trusted with public's money. Should an applicant be denied legal aid, they can apply to the Legal Aid Review Panel to look at the Legal Services Agency's decision-making process. Ms Baisley in her report suggests scrapping the Legal Aid Review Panel, which is what this legislation does, and replacing it with a tribunal that will work from and within the Ministry of Justice. This is what Ms Baisley says about the prospect of a lawyer heading the tribunal that will be assessing legal aid decisions. She says, in reviewing decisions of the Legal Services Agency, the new tribunal should have regard to both access to justice considerations and responsible expenditure of public monies. I am not confident that a chair drawn from the legal profession will necessarily achieve the appropriate balance between these considerations. Therefore, I consider that the opportunity should be taken to appoint a non-lawyer as the chair of the new tribunal. We cannot agree to this and believe it undermines the legitimate concerns raised within the report. We do not agree that the answer to the issues raised in the report about the operation of legal services is best remedied by bringing it under the purview of the Crown and thereby breaching one of the principles of natural justice. The structural solution being proposed in the wake of the report will end, whatever its faults may be, the independence of the Legal Aid Services Agency and fold it back into the Ministry of Justice. There will be genuine accusations of political interference in the decisions to grant or refuse legal aid applications. This will erode public confidence in the legal aid system and could undermine access to legal aid by members of the public concerned about privacy and political interference. Mr. Speaker, we're also very concerned about the principles of natural justice are being undermined in an attempt to make administrative savings. While some of this could have been remedied in the Select Committee, and we welcome that discussion, we are not satisfied that this bill, as it is, promotes and protects public access to justice, builds confidence in the legal profession, or meets the precepts of natural justice. We'll be opposing this bill.